Well, you got it. It's there's.
We are live. We are live.
We are live. I don't see it, but we are live.
We are live. Finally. Yes.
Hey, everybody. This is Mark Lawrence, along with our cast of experts on Proline TV. Jim Feist, the legend himself from Las Vegas. Speaking of Las Vegas, Andy Iskoe from TheLogicalApproach.com, and our producer extraordinaire, Greg DePalma from Prime Sports Network. And we're going to tear apart the Big Ten Conference on our show here today. And what a conference it is. People think it rivals the Southeast Conference. Many do, many don't. I happen to personally think the Southeast Conference is still the king until proven otherwise. Andy, you might argue with that and say, well, the Big Ten's won back-to-back national championships.
Greg would argue with that because he's the one who maintains it. I still say the SEC, but I would say the gap is not as great today as it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago, and that's even with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas into the SEC.
Exactly.
I think the gap is closed. I think the recruiting has gotten a lot better in the Big Ten.
I think the depth of the SEC is still superior, but I think the top of the conferences are even.
Well, with that, guys, I'm going to remind everybody that Victor King, our totals guru, will be back on the show August 14th when we begin previewing the NFL, AFC, and NFC preview divisions. Just mark that down. Victor back in the saddle August 14th. This is a free podcast for everybody listening. If you'd like to watch the show live, you can do so every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, although we're a little past the post time here right now, but nonetheless, Thursdays at 1 o'clock to watch it live on the Proline TV network. And since this is a Big Ten preview, I want to remind you that you can get other insightful information here on this network almost daily on the show here. For instance, we're going to be featuring our own Jim Feist. Jim Feist is going to be doing a Sunday night betting show, NFL Sunday nights with early lines and analysis and bets. You've got also Jim doing the ProLine Pigskin Mondays with Greg DePalma as they'll recap the weekend in football along with a Monday night preview on the football game. Then there's Jim Feist again doing the pizza show. Jim, are you being paid for all these appearances?
It's a social service.
I understand. Okay. Well, Jim is at Dom DeMarco's. He'll be doing the handicapping show from Dom DeMarco's, and he's joined by all the industry leaders doing just that. You absolutely have to tune in because it is a must watch. He'll also be hosting the NFL teaser and NFL alternate lines along with Andy Iskoe doing NFL totals and props with Victor King as well. Pigskin Fridays with Greg, Jim, and myself will be doing our final analysis on the picks for the football games on both the college and NFL cards on Fridays. I also want to remind our listeners out there that if you have not hit the subscribe button, please do so now. And while you're there, hit the like button as well. We'll keep you in the loop with everything that we're doing here on Proline TV. Also, ring the bell, if you will. You become good friends of ours by doing all those things. That's a big favor to us, if you will. With that, guys, it's Big Ten football time here right now, and we're going to tear apart the Big Ten football conference. And I'll start it off here. We're going to go alphabetically with this Big Ten football conference here. And we're going to start out alphabetically with Illinois, the Fighting Illini, who had a great football season last year. But I'm going to say this before I hand it off to Jim here, that this is an Illini football team that comes back loaded, okay? 19 starters back, 10 on offense, number 4 overall in the country in returning production rankings off that big year last year. So my question is why is the over-under season win total only 7.5 for all these good things and all these boxes that Illinois is checking? Well, one of the reasons is, and I'm sure the odds makers are well attuned to this as well, but they were one of the rare teams in college football last year that improved their numbers straight up against the spread, but they went backwards offensively and defensively in both statistics. That's kind of a rare bird to find a team to do something just like that. I call that returning to the norm, if you will, getting back to the norm, a situation like that. The last time Illinois won 10 games in a season was in 2001. And they went 10-2 under Ron Turner when they did just that. The next season, which would be this season, applicable, they went 5-7, losing their first 5 consecutive games in a row. That's my little take on the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Jim, I know there's no line game for Illinois coming up here because they're going to play a cupcake, which a lot of these big, powerful conference teams do. So I'm going to hold you off to Indiana, if we may. We're looking about the Indiana Hoosiers. But before I do that, Andy Isco, I know you've got something you want to say about Illinois here as well.
Well, looking at Illinois' schedule, I can make a case for the over. I mean, I'm looking at who they play. Depends what you think about USC. Are they a good team? Have they proven it yet in the Big Ten? I'm not really sure after the one season. They host Ohio State. I don't see Penn State on the schedule. I don't see Michigan on the schedule. I don't see Oregon on the schedule. I think they have a very favorable schedule. The one thing, now you mentioned about the statistical decline last year. I'm going to take a look, however, at the breakdown offensively. They decreased their reliance on the passing game. They went from 249 to 211. So that's a 38-yard decline. But that's offset not by almost the same amount, not quite, but they improved their rushing game by about 30 yards, 125 to 154. But more significantly, the number that I look at is the yards per rush. And they had a significant improvement, 3.8 2 years ago to 4.4. That's Brett Bielema's type of football. He's been here, that was his 4th year. So now it's his 5th year. He's got all his 100% of his recruits and transfers. This schedule suggests now, what do we say the line here was? Illinois 7.5. I can see this team winning 8 games. I mean, I'm taking a look. Home games against Western Illinois, that should be a win. Western Michigan should be a win. USC, well, it's a 7-6 team last year. We don't know. Ohio State, that's a loss. Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern. That's the rest of their home schedule. So they have a good chance at winning 4 or 5 of those games. On the road, can they win at Duke? Possibly. At Indiana? Well, Indiana's another candidate to show regression based upon the tremendous success they had last year under their first-year head coach who brought over a lot of his players. At Purdue, what's Purdue's win total? I think it's around 3, if I recall. In fact,
3.5,
exactly
right.
3.5 almost, because I see 3. What I'm looking at is 3, but the over is heavily vigged. So I think they could win at Purdue. At Washington, that might be a little bit difficult. Washington, 6-7 last year, almost like the USC. At Wisconsin, well, that's Bielema's old team. So, I mean, it's been a number of years removed. So I think Illinois certainly can win 8 games this year. So I'll be looking to play the over in this one. Haven't played it yet. I want to see what kind of movement we get over. We are still about, 5 weeks away, almost 5 weeks exactly. August 23rd is the first game, but August 29th is when most of the college teams start. So we're basically a month and a half away. There might be some movement in that time, and I'll be sure to react if that move starts to go against me.
Yeah, keep in mind it's minus 160 on the 7.5, so you do have to deal with that. Yeah. I agree with you, Andy. I think they are, because they're so well coached, they have all their starters back on the offensive line. So like you said, they did improve their running game last year, and you can see why. So they should be even better this year. The problem is, and I think this is only for whether or not you think they have the ability to be something special. They do not have a Chase Brown. You haven't been able to replace him since he left a couple of years ago. They don't have that special back. And they also just lost their top 2 receivers. Pat Bryant, high draft pick, went to the Denver Broncos. So they've lost their 2 key receivers. They do not have an electrifying running back. So really, they have a veteran quarterback. Altmaier's a nice quarterback, but they're not a sexy offense. So they're going to just try to win a lot of lower scoring defensive games, which, like you said, this is Bielema's type of game, and I could definitely see him winning 8. The problem is just if anybody thinks they're much better than that, if this year's Indiana, I don't see that.
Well, that's a Brett Bielema type football team. Very, very blue collar, not sexy at all. My only concern here, though, guys, is the expectancy for Illinois after what they did last football season. When you double up your wins, you win 10 games in a football season, and you're going to ask somebody to maybe come close to matching that. Everything has to go the same this year as it did last year. And I think it's very, very difficult for teams.
I'm just going to add one thing to that, because it's a team that I really like that shows a similar profile to the team last year we talked about last week with all the returning starters, and that's Oklahoma State. And they ended up going down to 3-9 last year. I don't know that you can make the comparison, although Bielema and Gundy are both veteran coaches who have had success. Gundy has had a lot of sustained success, but Illinois certainly fits the profile of a team that should perform well. Now, Greg talked about the loss of some of the key players on offense, but there are 10 starters returning. Now, that includes starters from other programs who are in here. So maybe the replacement won't be all that bad. And again, I think that opening 3-week schedule Western Illinois at home, at Duke, at Western Michigan. Those are 3 good games to get a lot of familiarity, get the timing down and everything before they go to Indiana and start Big Ten season in week 4.
Well, speaking about Indiana, guys, they're the next team up on the block coming up on our preview list here. A great season last year for the Hoosiers. 11 wins coming off a 3-win effort the year before, and it was all about Kirk Cignetti, the coach who transferred in and ended up winning National Coach of the Year. An honor well done, well deserved, what he did. But my concern here again is you go from 3 wins to 11 wins. There's not a whole lot of room for improvement for a football team like this. They've got 8.5 wins for the season over under win total. They're only going to face 4 teams that had winning records last year. So that schedule is very favorable for the Hoosiers here as well. Jim, I see they're going to open up with Old Dominion in their first game. What does that number look like in that first game?
Memorial Stadium in Bloomington, they're 23 favored. The over and under is 54.5.
Andy, what's your thought here on the Indiana Hoosiers this football season? Up or down?
Well, again, they've got one of those profiles, and I haven't had a chance to take a look at it, but maybe between now, you or I, Mark, can do it. They start with 4 home games, which is always a good way to build confidence and get things set. Now they do have a decent number of starters. I think playbook preview shows 9 offense, 7 defense. So that's 16 out of, well, actually 20. Now, by the way, Mark, you don't include special team returners on that, correct? You punters and kickers.
No, because they're not starters. Okay, but they are included on the returning production, not on the returning starters, right?
Yeah, but so they've got Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, and Illinois, and that'll be a key game. That'll be the Big Ten opener for both Indiana and Illinois. The key game for me may very well be Iowa the following week after Illinois at Iowa, because that'll be really, it depends what you think about Illinois. I like them, but Iowa is such a veteran, not veteran team, but they're a traditional team. So, but I that comes, I think, a couple of weeks after the Iowa State game, maybe 2 weeks after that. I'm enthusiastic about Indiana. I like Kirk Cignetti. I like the job he did, previously at James Madison, and he came over, brought a lot of his players with him. But I think, I even though you got the VIG there, I feel probably more comfortable playing Illinois over their total, even with the VIG, at 7.5 than I do Indiana over 8.5. Looking at the schedule, though, they do play Penn State. They play Oregon, at Penn State, at Iowa. So they can only afford, if you're going to go over the 8.5, 9-3. Well, maybe the 3 losses right there: Penn State, Oregon, maybe at Iowa. They'd have to run the rest of the table. So I could see it very difficult being, especially because Penn State's considered national championship caliber. Oregon, maybe not quite up there, but they've been a very solid program, and their transition into the Big Ten last year was seamless. The home schedule, again, favorable, but there are a couple of possibilities there. So I'm right now neutral on Indiana. I'd probably, if I were to play it right now, I'd say 8-4 is a reasonable number, which would be under the 8.5.
Yeah, the schedule is like you said. Even though there's a lot of cupcakes on the schedule, as you said, Mark, there's only 4 teams with winning records. The problem is they're all 4 really good teams. Yeah. And those are the teams. Yeah. So those are the 4 teams that we're actually expecting to potentially lose. So if they pull off one of those upsets, though, and they even get upset once with the easier teams, then I do think that puts them over the total. And
by the way, just remember one thing. One of those 4 teams with the winning record is a team that Mark is somewhat down on, and that's Illinois.
Yeah, and at least they do get Illinois at home.
Yeah,
that's a little bit of an advantage, of course. But does that mean that they're definitely going to beat Illinois? They're definitely going to beat Wisconsin and UCLA and Michigan State and all that. So I don't know. I don't know if Indiana's at that level yet. They do have talent coming back, though. I mean, they still have a couple of good players coming back on defense. They still have some top players coming back on offense, including their top 2 wide receivers. So yeah, they're well coached. We know that. We saw that last year. I don't think because Fernando Mendoza is going to be the real, I guess he's going to be the real benchmark of whether Indiana can have anywhere near the type of season he had last season, because Rourke had such a special season. But again, the schedule, he wasn't facing a lot of tough teams. Mendoza is going to now face some tough teams. He was a pretty good quarterback, but how good is he now that he's going to be in the Big Ten? We're going to find out. I think it's a solid quarterback. I just don't know if he's as good as a lot of people are touting.
This could well be whether or not Kirk Cignetti is the real deal. I mean, he proved it to be that way last year. They were the only FBS team in the entire nation last year that improved its offense and defense, each over 100 yards on both sides of the football. That's a pretty strong statement for a football program to make. Now, the question here is obviously, can they do it again this season here? I'm going to say no, they can't, only because I'm a firm believer of you got to prove it to me to believe it. When you reach new heights, there's almost always a Peter Principle return to the norm somewhere lurking in the weeds. Those 4 tough games against those 4 teams that were winning bowl teams last year, I think it's going to end up biting them. Let's move over to Iowa, the Hawkeyes here, a football team with Kirk Ferentz, the longest tenure coach in all of college football, and 31 conference wins he's had from 2020 to 24. What he's been doing here is he's been getting by with garbage. Okay, he has no offense whatsoever. He had his son was the head coach. He had to end up firing him. He is under duress and under pressure. I'm sorry?
Coordinator,
yes. I'm
you
sorry.
said head coach.
I'm sorry. He was the offensive coordinator.
And it was pretty offensive.
Yes, it was very offensive. Okay. He's got a 52-person support staff behind him here. Tim Lester, offensive coordinator, comes in. He sparked a 13-point, 108-yard per game revival for this football program last year. This is an Iowa football team here that will face 6 teams this year that won 9 or more games last year. Iowa will this football season here. They're probably going to be right where they need to be as far as over-under totals are concerned. Jim, I know there's no opening line on this game here.
Playing Albany, there's no line on that. Connect Stadium and Iowa City, they're going up against Albany.
Well, Andy, where they seem to have gotten their business taken care of is November. They're 21-3 in November, dating back to 2019. And they're going to face 6 teams that won 9 or more games last year, as I said this year. Your take, Andy, on the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Oh, is it? Because I'm showing only 1, 2, 3 teams that won more than 9 games last year for Iowa. Iowa State, Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon. So maybe that's 4. Yeah.
Okay, I will stand corrected on that until I prove otherwise. Yes.
Well, the thing that I like about Iowa, and you pointed out November, they can overcome a 3-3 start. Albany, UMass, Indiana at home, although Indiana is not a given. At Iowa State, at Rutgers, at Wisconsin on the road. So I could see 3-3 or 4-2. But then they also play 4 of their final 6 games at home, and those are against some of the tougher teams. They play Penn State and Oregon sandwiched around at home, sandwiched around a home game against Minnesota, and then they finish with 2 out of 3 on the road. At USC and Nebraska, sandwiched around a home game against Michigan State. We know Ferentz has had great success, and one of the things that is very important to me, again, I take a look at average yards rather than yards per game. Look at Iowa, and I'm using the playbook. It's a great source of information all in one place, and so it's easy to see. Yards per rush, 2022, 3 and 4, 3.5, 2.9, 3.3. That's hideous. I mean, this is a team that used to throw a celebration when the defense got a safety, because that was often as many points as they would get in a quarter. Last year, that improved to 198 yards per game, but that was 5.2 yards per rush. That's almost unheard of, gaining 2.0, almost 2.0, 1.9 yards per rush in the span of just one season. So that showed that the offensive changes that were needed to be made had worked last year, at least as far as that running game is concerned. Now, I'm showing their total wins at 7.5. And interestingly enough, at least when I'm looking at it, this is from Circa a few weeks ago. Actually, it was last week. 7.5 with the under at -140. I could certainly see this team being an 8-4 team. I mean, you go back even the last 4 years, including postseason, 8 wins, 10 wins, 8 wins, 10 wins. Ferentz is an accomplished coach. They are middle of the pack as far as what they've got returning production, but he's a good coach. The schedule is somewhat favorable, again, because the more difficult games are A, in the latter part of the season, and B, at home. I think this team's 8-4. 9-3 might be its ceiling.
Well, that's what they've been. They've been a consistent winner. Sorry, Greg, to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're just going to have another one of his teams that's going to win games, and whether it's 8 or 9, it's probably going to be the case just because he's a great coach, and that's it. There's nothing special about this team offensively. Again, They may have better quarterback play because this kid Gronowski comes from one of the better FCS programs. It's always nice to see how these FCS quarterbacks can perform in the big time. So that's going to be the difference right there, because they lose Caleb Johnson, who's a big-time running back, one of the best running backs in the nation last year. And they don't have a passing game again. Everybody's back. There's nobody new. So it's like the same team, the same type of players. They've lost a couple of key guys on defense as well. I know that they've got guys coming back, but I actually don't think they're a better team than they were last year, with the exception of the quarterback spot. If this Gronowski kid is a lot better than anybody thinks, then Iowa may be able to be better than we think. But if he's not, yeah, they're probably anywhere from a 7 to 9 win team, based solely on the fact that Kirk Ferentz is an awesome coach.
Well, does anybody, I'm going to ask you guys this question, does anybody out there feel that Iowa belongs in the class with Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, and Ohio State?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
Not without an offense, they can't. No.
Well, what they are is 5 teams throw Iowa into the mix. The only 5 teams in college football that have won 8 or more games the last 10 years in a row. That's the under-the-radar type job that Ferentz has done with his football program here. Doesn't mean they're as good as Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, or Ohio State, but it's very seldom that they win fewer games than what's posted for their season win total this year. Just a thought. I just want to throw that out there, but I don't think people realize how many games Iowa wins each and every year.
That's great company to be in, but not in that same class.
Not class, but company. Exactly.
That has a lot to do with the schedule, doesn't it, Mark?
Well, it does. You know, you're talking about throwing a claiming horse into a stakes race, and just because in a stakes race doesn't make him a good horse.
Yeah, I don't remember Iowa playing too many games, though, against Furman.
Not too many. No, not the Big Ten.
They play. No, well, Northern Iowa's been. That's often their one of their non-conference, FCS game, FBS teams. Northern Iowa's had a pretty solid program going back years and years at that level.
Well, they sure have. Yeah, they're one of the better group of 5 programs, if you will, per se that way. Let's move it over to the Maryland Terrapins this football season here, guys. A little bit light on returning starters and returning production. 10 overall returning starters, 107th in the nation in returning production. Those not good numbers here for Mike Locksley, head coach who went back to where he had lived before. He went 8 games back-to-back years before that, 7 games the year before that, but he was under a whole lot of heat to get things turned around at Maryland. He did so in those 3 previous years, and he came back to earth last football season here. This is a football team with an over-under of 4.5 on the season here. Who knows what happens with a team's got an over-under of 4.5 wins. I'm completely baffled by what the Maryland Terrapins can do this football season here, but I'm certainly not going to be playing them over. Jim, what do we look at for a season opener here for Maryland Terrapins?
You know, this is I'd have to ask, how good is Florida Atlantic? I mean, they were only Maryland 16.5. They open at home, 57.5 total. But, you know, a lot of times when you talk about these games, are over 20-point favorites. This is a low line compared to some of the other numbers we're talked about so far.
Yeah, for a team that is the caliber or the breed of Florida Atlantic. You know, they live in the AAC, Florida Atlantic does, and, they're not a powerhouse group of 5 team to say the least. So I don't think there's a lot of respect for Maryland out there this year. Andy, your take on the Terrapins?
Well, once again, I look at the schedule. Opens with 3 straight home games: Florida Atlantic, Northern Illinois, and Towson. For sake of argument, let's give them wins in all 3 of those games. So now they've got 8 games left, and they have to win 2 of them to go over their 4.5. And all 8 of those games are Big Ten games. I'm trying to see which teams they are better than amongst those 8 teams. I don't think they're better than Wisconsin. I don't think they're better than Washington. I don't think they're better than Nebraska. I don't think they're better than UCLA. Rutgers, hard to say. Shiano's such a good coach there. Illinois, I think, is a better program right now. Michigan, better. Michigan State figures to be improved. I guess all the lines, the advanced lines that they sometimes put out, weren't available here, but I cannot see which teams they would be favored over, expected to win, other than their first 3 opponents.
That's a great point,
I think
Andy.
He's been getting away, Locksley, with the fact that he's done pretty well with the quarterback situation. And we all know if you have a good quarterback, you can win half of your games each season just by that alone. Last year, didn't have a good quarterback, had a bad season. Now he's going to rely on another 2 freshmen, which he's done before. So if he gets lucky and this kid Washington turns out to be another really good quarterback, then maybe they actually can win 5 games, but you're relying on a true freshman quarterback, and it's a risky proposition. So it's true, but the bottom line is he does need to win some games this year. Otherwise, you do wonder whether or not he'll be on a short leash.
Let's go over to the Michigan Wolverines here, guys. Former Big Ten champion 2 years ago with that perfect 15-0 season, which was the pathway to the National Football League for Jim Harbaugh doing just that. Sharon Moore took over, and the team football struggled. They really did. But they did close up with a bang, beating Ohio State, outlasting Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. So the pedigree is still there for Michigan. There's no question about that. We're looking at 8.5 for a season over/under win total, shaded to the minus 130 to the over in that football game. Here's the neat thing about Michigan. If you like their chances this year, I don't want to play them over 8.5, but if you like their chances, they're going to take on only 3 teams this year that had winning records last year. That's not really a favorable proposition if you want to play under in a football team like this. I'd lean.
Excuse me, Mark, just to emphasize that point, they played only one team, Ohio State, that had more than 7 wins last year. So not only did they not play a lot of teams with winning records, the teams that they played winning records were 7-6, other than Ohio State.
Yep, that would be, I believe it was Nebraska and Southern Cal. Ohio State, the big boy on the block. So, they may feel awfully good about themselves this year, but they're going to take on a really lightweight schedule per se, if you will. Andy, go deeper here, if you will, on this football team.
Well, does Jim have the line against New Mexico in their
their 34-point favorite, 52.5 points is the total. Doesn't look like much of a match.
No.
The second game of the season at Oklahoma will tell us a lot more, obviously.
Yeah. Well, 8.5 seems to be a high number considering they had won 12, 13, and 15 the 3 previous years, changed coaches, Jim Harbaugh gone, Sharon Moore coming in. They dropped to 8-5, but that was to be expected with all that they lost off of the championship game, including McCarthy and the coach. But when you look at this schedule, let me take a look at some of the teams on that schedule. Nebraska, I'm good on Nebraska. I think they're better than the 7-6 team they were last year. I think Oklahoma's better than a 6-7 team that they were last year. Wisconsin figures to be probably a little bit better. So Michigan's going to have its work cut out for it, although the end of the season, again, leading into that Ohio State game at Northwestern, at Maryland, they may be 2 games, and that comes after games against their arch rival, or one of their arch rivals, at Michigan State, followed by Purdue. It's not expected much. So they might be able to eke out 8-5 last year, and that includes that bowl win. So they were 7-5. Boy, it's tough asking Michigan to go over 8.5. Not sure I'm going to play it under, but I'm certainly not going to play it over.
This is, you remember last year, I wasn't high on Michigan at all, that they'd have a really poor year because their quarterback play was awful. And that's what happened. They played a lot better at the end of the season. As you said, Mark, though, a lot of that had to do with their defense was still fantastic. And they just found a way to just not pass the ball, run the ball, play defense, play sound fundamental football, and they won some big games. And I do think that's going to carry over. I expect this is going to be another one of their better seasons. I think they've got about a 9 or 10 win type season in them. A lot, though, is all going to depend on Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood is is another 5-star kid that they brought in. J.J. McCarthy was, of course, the last kid that they brought in as a 5-star who turned into somebody that eventually won a national championship. Their running game should be okay because they brought in a nice transfer from Alabama. And I don't think I'm worried about their running game. But what's important is they're going to have a better passing game. That'll open up the running game. The passing game has been awful lately, but the passing game should be a lot better under Bryce Underwood. So, and their defense is going to be fine. Defense is going to be just as talented as it's been. I don't know if there's going to be a huge drop-off there, even though they lost some really key players. But I think overall, this is a much better team than they've been, especially last year. And I think they're going to rebound, and I think they're going to be a contender for the Big Ten title.
Michigan Wolverines on the come right now. Michigan State, their in-state rival. This is a football program I like, and I think they can be sneaky good this football season, guys, here for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm a big Jonathan Smith fan. He come over here last year, Only 5 wins in the season, an uptick of 1 win from the previous year, but he improved those numbers offensively and defensively. And you don't find that with 5-win football teams. They usually struggle statistically, but his program did not do that. You've got a team here that's loaded. I'm not saying loaded, but very, very deep as far as returning starters go, and especially with returning production. They're number 16 overall in the country in returning production. I like this football program here. And remember this, they've now had 3 losing seasons in a row. The last time Michigan State suffered 3 consecutive non-winning seasons in a row was 1982 and through 84. They're coming off 3 consecutive losing seasons. That year in 85, they went 8-3-1. Andy, your take on the Spartans?
Does Jim have the line against was it Western
Yeah,
Michigan? I believe
State is Michigan State 17.5, and the total 49.5. They open at East Lansing against Western Michigan. That's a big rivalry, I take it.
Yeah, one of those directional MAC teams. Yes, exactly.
It certainly is for Western Michigan. I would place for Michigan State, probably Ohio State and Michigan, a little bit more important, but the Broncos are a competitive program in the MAC for a number of years. Michigan State, one of the things you mentioned was the improvement they had. In fact, even in the rushing game, which wasn't great last year, it still improved after 3 years of decline. 4.9 down to 3.8, down to 2.9 2 years ago, up to 3.7. So that's modest improvement, but it's still improving. I mean, in fact, you go to that 2.9 year, there aren't very many college football teams that can rush for only 90 yards per game. I mean, and that's very, very modest, and that even includes some of the bad teams that still can put up better numbers than that. So I think Jonathan Smith had a nice impact in that first year, and I like coaches that show some improvement in that first year, which he did arguably at Michigan State, and Mark pointed out some of those numbers that I think, looking at their win total of 5.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 home games, and then a neutral site game at against Maryland. Actually, it's in Detroit at the end of the year. So their road games at Iowa, at Minnesota, at Nebraska, at USC. That's it. That's it. They could probably win one of those games. They don't have to win that many because I think they have winnable games within the conference. Probably UCLA might be the best chance for them to win. I think this is a team that can get back to a bowl game by going 6-6.
I agree with Andy. I think that's about all you can expect, unless it's a big jump out of their quarterback. It was a freshman, actually a sophomore last year, did a really good job, a young quarterback. They really like him. So if he takes that big jump, maybe they can be a 7-8 win team and pull off an upset. Like Mark said, Jonathan Smith's excellent football coach, and he's going to get this team where they need to be. But I just think it's a little early for them. So bowl game, I think that's a good goal. Keep an eye on wide receiver Nick Marsh. He's got first-round talent in the next couple of years. And if Childs, the quarterback, plays well, Marsh will be a big reason for it.
Okay, let's move on, guys. Good takes here on those Michigan football programs here. Let's hop over to Nebraska. This is what I call...
How about Minnesota?
Yeah, let's do Minnesota.
Yeah.
Let me backtrack a little bit here.
I struggle with the alphabet, but I figured this one out.
Well, good. Andy's on autopilot is what Andy is.
Amongst other things.
Yeah, yes.
No.
We'll
Just
leave it
coffee.
at autopilot, okay?
Just coffee.
Andy definitely had his cup of coffee this morning.
Well, this is a Minnesota football team where everything old is new again in Minnesota, where they spent the spring plugging all these holes that they have across the roster. They had to replace last year's starting quarterback. They went to the transfer portal real heavy again this football season here. They seem to be desperate each and every year coming into a new football season here. PJ Fleck doesn't get any love at all from anybody, but all he does is win football games. That goes back to his days in the Big Ten, or I say the MAC conference here. It looks like he might have his work cut out for him again this year, as I mentioned here. Number 78 overall in returning production. Season over under win total 6.5, heavily favored to the over here if it hasn't moved to 7 by yet. Andy, what do you take on the Gophers this year?
Well, Jim's going to give us, I think, the line. Don't they open against Buffalo, I believe?
They open against Buffalo, Minnesota 17.
That's a Thursday game.
It's it's the Thursday the 28th. They're in Minnesota. Minnesota 17.5, 45.5 is the total against Buffalo.
Well, you look at Minnesota's history under P.J. Fleck. His first year was 2017. They had 5 wins, didn't make a bowl game. Beginning in 2018 and up through last year, they have been to a bowl game in every season except the COVID season, where I don't believe they had a lot of bowl games from the Big Ten. They only played a 5 or 6 game schedule. Minnesota still went, well, I guess they played 7, 4, 3 and 4 in that season. So he's had a consistency of going to bowl games, and even going back over the last few years, 9 wins, 6 wins, 8 wins, with the 8 wins coming last year. I could make a case for the over in this one, though I don't like the VIG of -145 that I'm showing right now, over 6.5. Schedule is reasonable. They play week 2 against Northwestern, but it's not Northwestern from Evanston. It's Northwestern State from down in Louisiana, so they should open with 2 wins. Could be tough going out to California in a Big Ten road trip, longer than historically they've had. Rutgers could be a competitive game. Getting to 6 wins should be doable, but I'd probably lean under 6.5 more than I would over, because 6 wins still gets you to a bowl game, but it cashes the under ticket.
You have 6 right now, or 7.5?
7.5 is what I'm saying, right?
I'm showing 6.5 -145. This is from Circa as of July 15th.
And it got DraftKings is 7.5. It got juiced up, I guess. So it looks like the direction of where that's going anyway. It looks like Nebraska is on the move. Greg,
Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Minnesota. I have Nebraska on my mind because I love Matt Rule, but let me get that out of me. Greg, go ahead.
This is, again, going to be a solid team because Fleck knows how to coach, even though there are people within the organization. That's what I call college football programs now. But that, I don't know, he can wear everybody a little thin with he's very animated. He's really hard to handle. So he really does need to keep winning. As long as he keeps winning, he's fine. But trust me, if he has one of those episodes where he has a bad season and a half, he'll be gone. But maybe he just needs a new place, because he's one of those like rah coaches that probably just needs to go somewhere else new and be that type of coach all over again, fresh new start. But anyway, as far as this team's concerned, the big drop is the quarterback spot. Brosmer's gone. That was a big pickup last year, one of those FCS quarterbacks that did really well. They don't have that guy, and I think that's going to be a big drop off for him. So I could see the number being around there, but that's only because they're going to have a pretty good defense.
Now it's my time for the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
You've been trying to go there for a long time.
Oh, for a long time, man.
And you know what? They're a road favorite.
They are.
Actually not, because it's really not.
That's neutral.
Kansas City, Missouri.
It's in Kansas City, Missouri, which is closer to Nebraska than it is Cincinnati, right. I think. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get a lot of love this year, guys. Largely because of Matt Rule. I mentioned before, the Rule is Matt Rule in year 3. He's done dramatic improvement with his football programs that he's taken over in college football. He broke on through to the other side last football season. Nebraska had their first winning season since 2016. That was a long, long time between drinks of water for the Cornhuskers here. But in those years 2 and 3, his football team, as a coach, he's gone 41-25 outright on the scoreboard. Really, really nice. But here's the kicker for me as far as the over-under total is concerned here. We're looking at 7.5 wins for Nebraska. Now, for them to get to the 8 wins and cash your ticket, you're going to have to hope that their schedule doesn't find too many top 25 ranked opponents. Because if it does, the last 27 times they've taken on a top 25 ranked opponent, they've gone down the tubes all 27 times. Now, can Matt Rule turn that around? That's the question here. That's what's on tap here for the Huskers this year. Andy, how do you see the silk of Nebraska here shaping out this football season?
Jim, did you have the line on that neutral site game?
Yes, we got Nebraska's 7 on this neutral, semi-neutral floor. I mean, they're a little bit closer to home, and 51.5. So Nebraska is 7, 51.5.
And they don't play their first true road game, because Cincinnati is a neutral site game, until October 11th, which would be game number 6. Because following Cincinnati, Akron, Houston Christian, Michigan State. I'm going to give them I'm going to give them wins against Cincinnati, Akron, Houston. I'll give them a split at home against Michigan and Michigan State. I think they can win one of those 2 games. So they're already, according to that, they're at 4 wins. Then they have at Maryland and at Minnesota. I think they can win both. I'll say they'll win one, at least one of them. So that's 5. Northwestern and USC. I probably 1-1, so they're 6. So then their total, which we said was.
I'm looking at 7.5.
If my forecast is accurate, 7.5. That means at UCLA, at Penn State, at home against Iowa, they would have to win 2 of those 3 games to get to 8 wins. That could be tough. Not sure I'm going to play this one at all. I like Matt Rule, and history suggests that he has a better chance of exceeding rather than falling short of. But because of the way that schedule lays out and what they might have to do to get to those 8 needed wins, because they could lose 2 out of those 3 at UCLA, at Penn State, and to Iowa. They could lose 2 against Iowa. They could lose. I will pass on this one as far as a total play goes. I would tend to lean over simply because of the history of Matt Rule in his 3rd year in a program, but I don't feel confident enough, especially because of the way that schedule lays out.
Yeah, the reason why Nebraska is probably going to get a lot of buzz, and deservedly so, not just because of Matt Rule, but that's because of the fact that they have Dylan Raiola at quarterback. Yep. And Raiola is a quarterback that would have easily initially been recruited by which he was, and maybe chosen a Georgia. The only reason he didn't choose one of these major schools is because of the bloodlines at Nebraska. He stays there, and that's why it's a gift to Nebraska, and that's why he played last year as a true freshman. That's how talented he is. So they have to take advantage of that. They've did a good job with the transfer portal this offseason, so that's going to help him out. I'll take over slightly. Because I do think they'll win at least another, game or 2 after what they did last year. So I think they were a 7-win regular season team last year. 6. So I think they could go 8 this time around. But I like Andy. I wouldn't. It's nothing I'd run to the to the bank with or anything like that because we still need to see.
It's also got a very high vig to the over.
Yeah, and in that case, I'd probably sit on that one. Because I need to see the proof anyway. Let's see them do it first, and then next year, because I believe next year is going to be the year that Nebraska is going to be able to contend for a Big Ten championship if everything goes well this year.
Andy, and if Rule's not back in the NFL,
if he skips to the NFL, if they're about to go to the then, good riddance if he does anything like that. It's like, come on. Stay in Nebraska for at least another year or 2. Get the job done.
It's all about money, Greg. You offer him $10, $12 million, he might show up.
Well, that's why Dylan Raiola is there.
What were you going to ask, Mark?
What do you see for the win total for Nebraska, Andy?
I'm showing 7.5 with the, and this is at circa -160 on the over, +140 to the under.
Okay, I saw 7.5 DraftKings, but I saw it like Pick'em, so I don't know which is ever it is, but 7.5.
I'm guessing DraftKings is probably right now live.
Yes.
As opposed to this one, which was just a few days old, but that'd still be a dramatic difference.
By the way, we got to really pick it up.
Okay, Greg, you brought out a great point before we move here about Dylan Raiola. Okay, 2nd year with this program here, also with Dana Holgerson. Coordinator comes in new, quarterback comes in new. 2nd year is almost always vast improvement. No Ohio State, no Oregon. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about Nebraska this football season here. Let's move it over to Northwestern. The little small kids on the block here, 4 wins for their over-under total this year. They're going to take on bowl teams in their last 5 football games. There's not a lot to like about this Northwestern football team. Not much at all as far as returning production is concerned here. I think they're going to battle Purdue for the cellar in the Big Ten Conference. Andy?
Well,
Jim,
you got a Tulane number. This is the first time you have a dog. Tulane's favored by 6, playing in New Orleans, and the total is 46.5.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule for Northwestern. I like what Coach Braun has done. He took over a team that had gone 1-11 2022, got them to 9-4 in 2023, which was a perfect team, Mark, that you like to fade the following year, going from 1 win to 9 wins, and you faded them down to 4-8. So that was not unexpected. The question is, and the statistics of that 9-4 team were pretty good. That he led them to the first year. As far as this year, I think again the schedule is going to make it very tough. They do open after Tulane with 4 straight home games. The second of which is at home against Oregon. They play at Penn State during the season. Then they have back-to-back games at Nebraska and at USC. Home games, Michigan, Minnesota. I can't play this one because I do like the coach, and maybe he can squeeze an extra win out. But fundamentally, I'd have to say probably if they were going to go over, 5-7 would be their ceiling, and that's just a little bit too little for me to feel comfortable.
Yeah, the thing with Northwestern, what they got going for them, you mentioned the coach. The coach is a good coach, so I have confidence that they're going to rebound this year. And most importantly, they've got a good quarterback room now. I really like what they saw out of this kid Louse last year. But more importantly, they get Preston Stone in. And Preston Stone was really looked at just a couple of years ago as a riser, a fast riser out of SMU. He lost the job to Jennings. Jennings took over and didn't relinquish the job. But Preston Stone, if he's healthy and if he looks the part like he did a couple of years ago, he could be a nice little sleeper quarterback to keep an eye on that nobody's expecting out of Northwestern.
So moving over to the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, 10.5 wins, shaded to the under -120. I'm going to throw this quick note out there that people want to fade defending national champions. To that, I say don't do it, at least to the over-under season total. And defending national champions since 2012 are 151-18. Average wins 12, average losses 5, average wins 12.5, average losses 1.5. This is also an Ohio State football team here, guys, that I think they didn't win the Big Ten championship last year. I think they're going to be fit to be tied this year. Jim, they're going to take on Texas, probably the game of the week, if not the month, in their season opener. What do you
and a rematch of the playoff game last year.
It could be the game of the year.
Yes, it should be.
Ohio State at home. 2.5 and 50.5 is the total. You just look at that and say Ohio State's only 2.5 at home, but they're playing Texas, and Texas.
Arch Manning.
Yes.
Arch Manning's a factor. Good point, Andy. Here, the revenge is a factor, obviously, and there's a lot of people that like Texas and they'll want to fade Ohio State. But we'll see who the better team is.
Do you have anything on that, Mark? When you have a revenge game between high quality programs right off the bat the following season?
Well, the problem
probably not very often.
No, and the problem is I can't ask the database high quality teams.
Yeah,
it doesn't have a
top
personality.
10 teams. Yeah,
right, exactly. I cannot do that. Sorry.
Well, I can only play this total under 10.5. Ohio State's an outstanding team. Can they run the table? Yeah, they can run the table. But 10.5 means you can only afford one slip up. And of course, they've got that game at Michigan at the end of the year that they'll be looking forward to. But can they slip up the week before at home against Rutgers? Probably not. They host Penn State in what will probably be a game that many people think could decide the Big Ten title. They host them on November 1st. That's really and the Texas game. So you're counting on winning every other game, 9 wins, and then you've got Texas at home, Penn State at home, and at Michigan to end the year. And they'd have to win 2 out of those 3 to get to 11 wins. It can be done, but I don't think there's great value in that, and I think that's reflected in the VIG here. Ohio State 10.5, -145, +125 to the over. Not sure I'm going to play it to lay that VIG, but I can't play the over even though it's possible, and there are probably going to be many other totals that I feel more comfortable with because I'm not having to basically allow no more than one slip up during the season.
The interesting thing about this game is going to be the fact that you're going to have, even though everybody knows about Arch Manning, you're still going to have 2 young quarterbacks that are going to be first year, starters from day one. Sayan has got a lot of talent as well at Ohio State, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of him either. There's going to be a lot of pressure on both kids. The thing to keep an eye on, though, is the fact that I think they're tied right now at 5-1 as far as national championship picks. So one of them will lose. The team that can afford to lose more is Ohio State, because even though they have those 3 big games, Ohio State can go 9-3, 10-2. They're going to go to the playoffs. Texas, even though they might fit the same mold, they've got tougher competition. Matter of fact, Texas's schedule, all of their tough games are away from home, either on the road or in neutral site situations. So that is going to be so Arch Manning, first year, a lot of pressure, a lot of tough games on the road. Texas really needs to come out of the gates fast, a little bit better, like I said, safer as Ohio State. Either way, I don't think there's any doubt that we could see these two teams back again in the playoffs or the national championship. But the key thing to look at in that first game is going to be the two young quarterbacks and how they handle it.
I'll tell you something, Greg, because this is interesting. Circa has, and a number of places, will or they will not make the playoffs. And I found this very surprising. Ohio State minus 400, Texas not that far behind, minus 350. That's a pretty big number. So apparently, even with the tougher schedule that Texas plays, but then again, they're going to 12 teams this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can go. If you go 9-3 and you're Ohio State or Texas with that schedule, chances are you're going to get in.
Yeah.
So
a lot of love for Hookem this year, no question about that. Oregon Ducks defending Big Ten national champions. I don't think people realize that. 10.5 under 120, same price as Ohio State this football season for the over/under win total. Jim, I know there's no line on this season opener. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. They're playing Montana State. They're in Eugene, Oregon. No, there is no line on this game.
So the question about them, this football team, is how loaded are they? They had 13 players invited to the NFL Combine last football season here. That was the fourth most in the nation. They lose a ton of talent. Yeah, the question is, can they replace that talent this quickly this year? Their quarterback, Dante Moore, is a former 5-star recruit who backed up Dylan Gabriel last football season here. This is a football program here I'm on the fence about, Andy. Steer me one way or another for Oregon, if you will.
Well, like Ohio State, their win total is 10.5. Unlike Ohio State, Oregon's over is plus 135. The under is minus 155. So even though I don't like playing over 10.5, I'd be much more willing to do it with Oregon getting a nice plus price than I would playing Ohio State having to lay they're also plus 125, but it's a much. I mentioned 3 tough games for Ohio State. I look at Oregon, and the only really difficult game I see for them where I can say, yeah, I'd mark it down as a loss, is a game midseason at Penn State.
It's an easy schedule, Andy.
Yeah. At Iowa, at Washington, at Rutgers, and at Northwestern. Home games, Montana State, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, USC. I imagine they'll be favored in all 8 of those games.
Yeah, that's the thing, is Oregon does not have a tough schedule at all.
7 of those games.
Yeah, I don't know how they would lose more than 1 game with this schedule. Even if they lose 2, they'll be a playoff team. The only thing, though, Dante Moore, you talked about him as a big 5-star guy, Mark. The problem is that he didn't look very good when he was playing those first couple of years. Now you could say, that's at UCLA. They were all screwed up, and that's the reason why they went through all those coaching changes. Maybe that's the case. Maybe now that he's at Oregon with better coaching, better foundation, the greatness comes out. But I don't know. I got to see it because I sure didn't see it when he played in his first couple of years. So that's the one thing that I would definitely, because if he comes out and looks like the guy that I kind of saw a couple of years ago, no way they're winning a national championship with this kid. So he's going to have to make big improvements.
Penn State Nittany Lions, a favorite in the Big Ten, 10.5 wins minus 110 for the price. And if you did it by the juice, guys, Penn State would be the favorite right now because they're minus 110. Buckeyes and Ducks minus 120. So there's a lot of love out there for Penn State currently on this football team here. Jim, I see they've got Nevada in their season opener. What are you looking at for a line?
This is ugly. I mean, minus 45 points. I mean, I guess this is over by halftime.
I was going to say first half or full game.
That's the full game. And then listen,
because 52-0 at halftime would not be a shock.
No, because the total's 59.5. So basically, I mean, they're saying Penn State scoring all the points, and they probably will.
Well, that's what
52-7. There you go. 59.
What James Franklin does. He schedules all these cupcakes, if you will.
Minus 45, right on the number.
Yep, he feasts on them. He's got 3 of them to open up the season: Florida International and Villanova behind them. So this God-fearing schedule that James Franklin has to go through, I guess he'll have to go to church all 3 weeks before those football games. The one good thing that they did do is they hired away Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator from Ohio State. So he's got the goods on the Buckeyes that way this football season here. But I am not a James Franklin football fan here. His record against top 5 ranked teams in his career, 1-15. Joe Paterno was 3-12 against the same first 15 top 5 ranked teams, and Franklin's right on his tail here right now, but 1-15. You gotta just step up and do better than that if you want to have dreams and desires of a national championship. Andy, your take, Nittany Lions.
Well, favorable schedule for the first 3 weeks, home to Nevada, Florida National, Villanova. First test will be September 27th at home against Oregon. Then they head out to UCLA, home to Northwestern, at Iowa, followed 2 weeks later, not the next week, at Ohio State. Their second big test, although I'm not going to say I was going to really test them, other than that could be a 21-17 type Penn State win there. Indiana, Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers. So the schedule does suggest that they can go over. And the plus in this one is plus 135. Now, again, I have to take a closer look at the interlocking schedules here, but that's very difficult even looking at overs. I said I would prefer Oregon over Ohio State, but to have 3 teams in the same conference with win totals of 10.5, that's allowing for, a lot of difficulty there, because you probably can't afford a second loss. Well, you can't afford to play the over. The playoffs are something different. So I'd probably lean under for Penn State simply because of the difficulty of the schedule, because I could see Ohio State on the road and I could see Oregon at home, both being losses for Penn State. Again, talking about the coaching matchups.
If they don't go over and they don't win, or at least get to the national championship, they really need to move on from Franklin, because this really, he's got the best advantage of all the top teams, because he has the one veteran quarterback that has proven it on the field, that should take another step this season. And if he does that, I think he'll be the first pick in the draft. He's got tremendous talent, Drew Aller. Both kids are back from the backfield. Who would have thought that? Singleton and Allen. These kids should have been in the pros already. They improved their receiving core, which was not good last year. It was all Tyler Warren at tight end. Now he's gone, but they actually still, because it's Penn State, still have good tight ends. Now they have really good receivers. This is going to be a lethal offense, better than last year, and the defense is going to be fine. Yes, they lose Abdul Carter. It's a major loss, but this is Penn State. They know how to play defense. They'll be just fine. But that's the thing that they have that none of the other teams have. They've got a veteran quarterback. And if Franklin cannot get this team to the championship game, I think they better part ways.
Let's move it over to the next powerhouse in the Big Ten Conference, the Purdue Boilermakers. I say that facetiously, obviously, here. Jim, they're not going to be favored too many times this year. What do they look like in that opening game?
Well, they are favored in this one, Mark. They're minus 16 and 50.5. They're playing Ball State.
Oh.
Feel sorry for Ball State this season.
Wow, that's a little redheaded stepchild in Ball State. I think Ball State might have some interest in this football game.
Ball State's better at basketball.
Yes, they are. Well, they lost Ryan Walters, their head coach. He flamed out, just 5 wins in 2 seasons. They pulled the plug on him. Barry Odom comes over from UNLV, where he did a really, really good job. He's a hard-nosed defensive mindset type of
an amazing job.
Yes.
Given the history of UNLV's program.
Yes, it was an amazing job. So now he's going to step up here. They allowed season-high yards last year defensively in 4 games, did Purdue last year. They can't do that this year. He overhauls the quarterback position here. Odom does, bringing in Malachi Singleton from Arkansas, Colson from Central Florida, and Evans Chuba from Washington State. So he's got a nice array of quarterbacks to work with here, but I don't think he's got a lot of talent on this football team. You need talent to win games. Only 8 starters back overall, and 108 number nationally in returning starting production. Andy, I don't see this team going anywhere.
Well, maybe it's not a bad thing you have so few starters returning from a team that went 1-11 last year, and the win was in the first game. Who would have thought, even it was against Indiana State, what was it, 49-0 they won. They only had 3 losses last year of the 11 losses by single digits. One was that wild 50-49 game against Purdue, and then they lost a 6-point game and a 7-point game. I think Odom's going to make a positive difference. Even you take a look at Walters, he took over a team in Purdue in 2023 that had gone 9-4, 8-6 the 2 years prior to his arrival there. He went 4-8 in that first year, and the 1-11 perhaps suggests a little bit difficulty in recruiting in those first 2 seasons. It's a Big Ten team. I have to think that they're going to win their non-conference games, okay? So Ball State and Southern Illinois, those are non-conference games. I see Purdue starting 2-0. The problem for Purdue is that their other non-conference game is at Notre Dame. That's one game I don't see this Big Ten winning. However, I can see wins against at Northwestern is a possibility. At home to Rutgers, possibly. Who knows what Indiana will be? That'll be that big old Oak and Bucket game. Don't know if I'll play it, but I could certainly make a case, especially if they start 2-0 and they have that, an Ohio, a Northwestern game that they can win, and maybe one or two others. I could certainly see a push at 3, a win at 4. So I would look to play over a little bit. Although, again, -130 on the VIG, so there are better plays out there. But that's the way I'd lean.
Yeah, it's going to be a long year for Purdue, but at least it can't get any worse. So that's the good part. They're headed in the right direction. It's just not going to be this year.
Let's get over to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights here. Greg Schiano returned here for a second term, where he's really got this football program on an uptick here of late. I got to give him credit here. Back-to-back 7-win seasons for this football program here. Financially, the move to the Big Ten was supposed to be a boost for this football program. It hasn't been at all. This program is $100 million in the rears. They've had to borrow money from the general fund to do just that. It's a good thing they're in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten allots them a lot of money each year from the big boys per se.
It made sense for them to join the Big Ten because of that conference payout, and it made sense for the Big Ten to get Rutgers because it means you're in that big New York metropolitan area market.
Exactly, and that's the reason Rutgers still resides in the Big Ten. Andy, where do you see them going this year?
Well, Jim, do they? What's their opening line against Ohio?
Well, they're playing Ohio, so I mean, this is not. It's not that big a line. Rutgers 10.5, 47.5. With that kind of number, you got to look at Ohio's possibility. Odds makers are saying it's not that big a difference between these two teams.
Rutgers, I'm showing a season win total 5.5, -150 to the over. So you're basically talking that VIG suggests that they will make a bowl team, something that Rutgers has done in each of the last 2 seasons under Schiano, and actually 3 of the last 4 seasons. They missed out in 2022 when they started 3-0 and then won just 1 game the rest of the season. Again, looking at the games that seem to be obvious losses, certainly working backwards, home to Penn State, at Ohio State, at home to Oregon, at home to Iowa. That could be a close game because that could be a low-scoring game. But I certainly can see Ohio U and Miami, pretty good MAC teams. Rutgers still should be able to beat them. Covering those spreads, I don't know. Norfolk State, 3-0. At Minnesota, at Washington, I could see them winning one of those 2 games. Purdue and Illinois, I think they more likely go 2-0 than 0-2 in those games. So there's at least 1 win there. And then at home to Maryland before they take on Ohio State and Penn State. So looking at the VIG on Rutgers, it is -150 on the over, +130 on the under. So my lean would be over, but I can't play it at that VIG. They're not good enough to expect them to go 6-6, although they have gone bowling the last 2 years.
Yeah, the key for them is health. They were really damaged by the injury bug last year, and yet they still were able to put together a bowl season. If they stay relatively healthy, I think this is going to be their best year under Schiano. The only reason why record may not indicate that is because it's a very tough schedule, especially later in the season. To have to end your season with Ohio State and Penn State in the last 2 games is pretty weak. But they have to deal with it. That's the life in the Big Ten. The thing that they have now that they haven't had in a long time is a quarterback. And this kid, Kalakamanis, did a really good job at the end of the season. He started to get a rhythm with the offense. He's got the same coordinator that he's had now, I think, for the same offense that he's had, because it's the same offense that he had in Minnesota. So he knows the offense like the back of his hand. Rutgers also has better receiver talent that they've had in years. They're very deep at wide receiver. Their offensive line is strong. So this offense can be the best Rutgers offense that Schiano's had since his earlier days with the program. And the defense should be really good too. Again, it's got to be a healthy team though. If they can stay healthy, they don't have to go 2 or 3 deep. I think this is going to be his best team since returning. The question is, how good and can they finally win that big game? I think they can. If they're healthy, watch out. They're going to upset somebody. Just don't know who that'll be.
Keeping one thing in mind about that schedule at the end, we mentioned at Ohio State and then home to Penn State to end the season. Those could easily be one of them, maybe even both of them, depending upon the results of the first game. Games that Ohio State needs to win to clinch a berth in the Big Ten championship game, or the following week, Penn State needing a win to clinch a berth in these championship games. So both Ohio State and Penn State could have an awful lot on the line. That's not suggesting a point spread play there, but it is suggesting it's hard to see those being one of those upsets. But I can certainly see, as you mentioned, Greg, almost any other game on the schedule would not be a shock.
Yeah, I'm looking more towards like Iowa. I mean, that's the type. Baby steps first. Going for Ohio State or Penn State would be a dream right now. But I think an Iowa win early in the season could be something that they could accomplish.
All right, guys, we got to step on it a little bit here. We got a handful more of teams in the Big Ten Conference to do. One quick note on Rutgers, though. Good news, 20-4 against the spread as a non-conference dog. Bad news, they're not going to be a non-conference dog this year. So,
also think, by the way, Schiano has an excellent record off of buys. So I remember seeing that in your book last year, and I think he went 2-0 last year off the buys. So keep that in mind.
All right, let's look at the UCLA Bruins, a mission team, one of two mission teams in the Big Ten this year, meaning that they a losing record last year, bowlers each of the previous 3 years. That's a good role to be in. 5.5 wins for the over/under season win total. Jim, they've got a big game on tap with Utah in their season opener. That's a nice little matchup here. What are you seeing for the number, Utah?
Well, they're actually a home dog here, Mark.
Wow.
Utah's -4, 51.5. Wow. Home dog to Utah.
Not a lot of respect. Not a lot of
coaching
respect.
Edge.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. Andy, what do you got here on the UCLA Bruins?
Well, I'm showing a 5.5 as the win total, under -140, over 5.5 plus 120. It's a tough season, the inaugural season in the Big Ten. The schedule a little bit different this year, but again, Penn State and Ohio State are on the schedule. The traditional season-ending game at USC, but we're only talking about making it to a bowl game. I don't know that Deshaun Foster had a lot to work with last year. He certainly got a lot of reviews. They certainly have some good returning players, not necessarily overall in production, but this is a team that prior to 5-7 last year had 8, 9, and 8 wins. I'd be more inclined to look at the over for UCLA. Not sure I would bet it, but at 5.5, I could see again the only two certain losses, and I'm not going to say they're going to lose to Utah. It's the first game of a new season. Penn State and Ohio State are the only ones I'm going to concede. USC could be a loss, and maybe we'll see how Nebraska, if they pan out. That's only 4 losses I'm giving them. I don't know that they're going to win 8 games, but they don't need to win 8 games to go over the 5.5.
Yeah, I'm going to call for them to be a bowl team, and that's because of the quarterback. I mean, we could say what we want about how he left and how bad that was. But the kid's a talented quarterback, and he's an upgrade there at UCLA. So I think that'll be good. And I thought Deshaun Foster did a tremendous job last year. I was surprised. I thought Deshaun Foster, didn't he just play in the NFL a couple of years ago? So he's actually looked a lot better than I thought he was. But the defense is where you're going to have to keep an eye on. They lost a lot of good players on defense, but I think he hit the portal well. And with that quarterback, I think they'll go bowling this year. I think they got a good chance for that.
If he stays around, Greg, he's been known to travel around. I think it's Iamaleava. I believe it's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure, but it spells Iamaleava, and that's what he's always done. He may well be on the move again. USC, Southern Cal. This is a football program here that has suffered 14 losses under Lincoln Riley here. And they got to get this thing in gear here because he's going to lose his rights to his private jet plane if he doesn't do any better than that. They didn't sign him with these big buck contract to lose 14 games at Southern Cal, but he does have 7 home games on tap this year. That'll be the benefit for this football program, playing 7 home games. Jim, I see they're playing one of the new kids on the block this year, Missouri State. How bad is it for Missouri State in this line?
32-point dog, 58.5 total. It doesn't look very competitive.
And Mark, isn't this the first time that USC is playing a formally now, but I understand they had never played an FCS team prior to this year.
That's a great point, Andy, and I remember that for a long time running back when I used to keep logging these teams, and I would say to myself, this team never steps out of Division I with all their opponents here. And great point you mentioned here, but the bottom line here, though, Andy, is Missouri State's now an FBS team. So
now they are, yeah.
Yes, they are.
Now they are, along with the Delaware Hens. 8 is the win total here, plus 105 on the over, minus 125 on the under. And I think it was Greg, or maybe it was you, Mark, whoever said about Lincoln Riley. He's almost becoming a modern day James Franklin. I've not been impressed with what he's done. And when I say a modern day Franklin, last year, a 3-point loss at Michigan, a 7-point loss. Well, Minnesota's not that. A 3-point loss at home to Penn State, a 1-point loss, a 5-point loss at Washington. He's had a lot of close losses. And, it's a bowl game. And, yeah, they beat Texas A&M. They had to win 35-31. But he's not been I don't know that he deserved that big contract. At Oklahoma, it's tough not to win with the players that he inherited and recruited. Been a little bit different at USC. Given his struggles and looking at the schedule this year, it is a winnable schedule at Notre Dame, at Oregon. Those are the really 2 tough games. USC is always a tough game because of the rivalry. Iowa and Michigan, they get at home. The only tough road games are the Notre Dame and Oregon. So I'm looking at, and I say that total of 8. Not sure I'll play it, but I could see this team going 9-3. They certainly have the talent.
Well, the problem is they haven't been winning those other games, Andy, at Illinois, at Nebraska. And that's what's been tripping them off. So they have to start winning those games. And look, there's talent on the team. Maeva is a quarterback that you guys know from UNLV, made the trip over to USC last year, won the job. Nobody thought he was going to win the job last year. Moss is gone. It's his job now. Keep an eye on Wayman Jordan. They like him as a transfer running back. We know that there's talent here, but the problem is there's not enough talent. They would have expected him to recruit like Pete Carroll recruited, and he hasn't done that. And until he can start recruiting top 5 classes, year in and year out, like you're supposed to, if you're USC, then he's just not going to get to that level.
No, that's why this team, with those close losses I mentioned, 7-6 could easily have been 10-3.
One note for Lincoln Riley here, and one of the reasons he may have been lured by the administrative staff at Southern Cal, he has had more success as a head coach before the age of 40 than any other coach in college football history, just given the fact that he's had 3 Heisman Trophy winners in his 8 seasons as a head coach, which probably means he should have done better than he's done. But nonetheless.
And my only question there, the only thing with that interesting stat is, were those 3 Heisman trophy winning quarterbacks guys he inherited when he took over the program, or guys, and this is more important, that he actually recruited?
Great question, Andy. We'll have to look into that. That's a great question. Either way, it's impressive, because if you take him over and he wins the Heisman Trophy, you're doing a great job of coaching. If he recruited them and they win the Heisman Trophy, you're doing a great job at both recruiting and coaching. Yep.
Although again, the great job of coaching is a little bit offset by those difficult situations in those big games, but he's winning enough other games to get that record.
All right, guys, we've got 2 more teams before we wrap this up here. The Washington Huskies, new kids on the block last year when they transferred here from the defunct Pac-12 conference. Jim, they're going to play Colorado State in their opener here this year. What do you look for a number, Colorado State?
Well, when you look at a line like this, and the game is being played in Seattle,
yes,
which is a home game, and you look at Washington being -1 in the game, that means that the odds makers are saying Colorado State's the better team, because when you take in home field advantage, and you're only making them 1. So Colorado State, they're saying, is the better team. The total is 52.5.
So how far has Washington fallen since their 14-win season 2 years ago? I think there's a little bit of disrespect for the Huskies there in that number here, this particular
Mark,
year.
I will say the answer to your question is right in your playbook. Look at the returning starters from 14-1 in 2023. Look at the returning starters coming back in 2024.
5.
2 on offense, 3 on defense.
Yes.
And they still made a bowl game.
Yes, they did. That was pretty. That's all coaching, is what that was. No question about that. With 5 returning starters, they got 12 back this year, number 79 overall in returning production. That was quite a drop off, though, from 14 wins to 6 last football season here. Yes, they did go bowling. This football program did, but I gotta feel like if I'm the Washington State head coach here, if I'm Jed Fish, I'm letting everybody know in the locker room in that first game, guys, we're only 1 point or a 1 point favorite in this football game. What's wrong? Nobody respects us here this football season here. we'll see what happens here. Andy, do you think that they can get up and over the season win total this year?
Well, I know they can win that opening game against Colorado State, and I'll be betting on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you give me that situation. You're talking about a Big Ten, even a former Pac-12 team going up against a Mountain West team. So, at home, first game of the season, you have to believe, I don't know what the recruiting numbers are, but you have to believe Washington still has more talent than Colorado State, especially with the experience that all those inexperienced starters got last year. And you can see the fact that their wins were spread throughout the season. Now, of course, that was their first season in the Big Ten, and you take a look this year who they play in the Big Ten. Now, their total for Washington is 7.5. The over is even money. The under is -120. And I look at the games that, again, I don't take a look at the wins so much as I take a look at the teams that they're almost pretty likely to lose to. At home to Ohio State, at Michigan, at home to Oregon. So those are 3 losses that I figure they have. So that would put them at 9-3. And even if you give them another loss, that could be to anywhere on there. They're still 8-4. I'm getting even money to go over 7.5. I'll be on the over on this one.
What did you have the line at?
1. Washington's 1.
It's 19.
Yeah, let me check on that.
It's 19.
19 what?
Points.
Oh.
You forgot the 9.
You got 19.5, 52.5. You're right. Yeah, I won't be on that one in that case.
Yeah.
It's not here. It's not in the.
No?
Okay. Now I see it now. Okay.
Yeah, because look, when we were going through, because this is the bottom end of the schedule, when we were doing that and we were going over the schedule, I know a lot of us weren't really pointing towards Washington when they were on the schedule. Well, that's a loss. Yeah. Well, I think that really could be. I think this is definitely a team that's going to be much better than last year. Yep. Fish came in late, and he threw in the non-starters, so it wasn't going to happen last year. But he went with a young quarterback late in the season, and this kid Williams, who's supposed to be a really talented kid. So expect good things there. The defense looks good. They added some really good transfers, and offensively, they got a good receiver. They added Amari Evans from Penn State, another transfer. Jonah Coleman is a 1,000-yard runner. Yeah, Washington is going to be right up there. They're going to be like at that second level in the conference that could get to the first level if everything goes their way.
So it won't, since it won't be edited out, ignore my comment about laying -1 in the first game at home to Colorado State.
That would be an 18.5 point teaser.
Yeah.
Well, I might lay -1 if it was like for the first 8 minutes of the game.
The screens cut off the final 2 numbers somehow. I don't know why, but it did.
Okay, so, one more team to go, Mark.
All right, let's wrap it up here, guys. Let's go to Wisconsin, cheesehead country here for the Badgers. A mission team again this football season here. Rare losing season last year, and they strung a series of bowl wins in a row before that. This is their worst 2-year stretch for Wisconsin the last 2 years, and it's not all that bad of a stretch, but it's their worst. 7 wins and 5 wins. That's 12 total wins, and that's their worst stretch since 1994 and 1995. They're used to winning football up there in Wisconsin. My concern here is their first 5 road games this year are going to be at Alabama, at Michigan, at Oregon, at Indiana, and at Minnesota.
Yeah.
Those teams tallied 39 wins last year. So does it make Luke Fickell on the hot seat this year? You better believe it does. That's a real
He's in a pickle. That's for sure.
Yes. Fickle in a pickle. They played 5 top 5 teams. Like I said, they played 3 top 5 ranked teams at home last football season for the first time. They hosted Alabama, Penn State, and Oregon, numbers 4, 3, and 1. So a little bit you can say of that damage that they suffered in that 5-7 season came from the fact of that salty schedule they had last year, and they've got the same this year. Andy, or I should say, Jim, you've got here in the season opening game here, Miami of Ohio. Could this be a tune-up game for Wisconsin?
Well, it's 17.5. It's almost that. Not that 17.5 point favorites never lose, but the total is 41.5. Miami is, this is a bigger game for them. Knocking off of Wisconsin would make them very happy, but it's probably not likely to happen.
Well, Andy, I mentioned that Wisconsin had that streak snap, that bowl streak that makes them a mission team. That was 22 consecutive bowl seasons in a row. That's going to put some egg on Luke Fickell's face this football season here. Will he be a driven head coach this year?
Yeah, he's also come under some criticism, understandably so. What's interesting about this game for Wisconsin, maybe we can do a little. It's always difficult to compare, but Ohio University and Miami. I forget who they. Ohio U opens up against Rutgers, and I forget Miami of Ohio opens up against Wisconsin. And I forget one of those, Miami or Ohio, I think plays another Big Ten team in week 2. So I want to take a look at that schedule when I get them all together.
Miami of Ohio is at Rutgers in week 2.
In week 2, okay. So then I think, and doesn't Rutgers open up against Ohio U? Yeah. So we might be able to use something by Wisconsin's performance in that game when Wisconsin does not play Rutgers later in the year, so we can't use that, but we can use it for the 2 MAC teams as far as that goes. I look at Wisconsin. You mentioned, at Alabama could be a loss or should be a loss. At Michigan could easily be a loss. At Oregon should be a loss. Indiana and Minnesota. I think there's enough there that they could at least split those 2 games. The number I'm showing for Wisconsin, over under 5. Despite the fact that Fickell has not performed well in the last couple of years, despite getting a fair amount of returning starters. By the way, I don't know if you're able to do this next year, Mark, because the space is limited, but that returning production number might be useful as something to put in there along with some of those past 4 seasons. It might not be able to fit in there, but you want to see, it's one thing to see that Wisconsin last year returned 15 starters, but it'd be interesting to see how much of those 15 starters and how much was the returning production there. So
that's a great point, Andy. We squeezed recruiting history in there.
Yeah.
Moved it over a little bit. I'll talk to Charles, our designer, and see if he can make room for returning production.
What you might do, even with the recruiting history, maybe 5-star and 4-star.
We don't care about threes and totals, right?
Threes and even the total. I mean, if you can't add 1 + 8 or 0 + 2 and 0 + 3 and 0 + 11, you got bigger problems than handicapping football games.
Well, the problem with 5s and 4s, Andy, is I'm talking the majority, probably at least 100 of the 136 teams will be zeros in 5s and 4 stars.
Yeah,
the big boys get all those guys.
Yeah. Looking at this, I was going to say, looking at the schedule here, I would tend to look simply on Fickell's coaching history, that he should be able to squeeze, especially being a mission team this year, he should be able to squeeze 6 wins out of that schedule, even with those losses that I said against at Oregon, at Alabama, and possibly home against Minnesota.
Yeah, I wonder whether or not that saves his job. I think it might be better off for them to, if they're going to be a 6-win team, just be a 5-win team and find a new coach. Because keep in mind, they're taking the quarterback that was starting at Maryland last year when they had a bad year. So I don't know what this is. How they screwed this up? They screwed it up the same way Nebraska screwed it up, and why they haven't been able to get going again. These Big Ten teams think that they have to all of a sudden change from being a running team, a defensive team with a big offensive line. No, it's a new age. We got to start throwing the ball more. And that's what he tried to do. He tried to bring in this high-flying offense to Wisconsin a couple of years ago. And ever since then, they haven't been able to fit the right players. It's been a disaster. They've had injuries at quarterback. You can't do that. Just stick with what works. And Ferentz has done it. He's done just fine. Yeah. So this is what happens, and they're going to find a new coach in 2026.
Well, let's see what happens this year, because this is his 3rd recruiting season. He should have realized that after the last 2 years, Greg. So let's see if you're absolutely right. And some of the recruits he comes in this year go more to the traditional Wisconsin style, and the style that fits the players that he inherited when he took over.
Yeah, the offensive coordinator, the new guy, is more of a wide zone running type of guy. So let's see if he can do that. And if he can, then maybe they'll keep him if they go to a bowl.
And by the way, the other thing that's good about being a running team in the Big Ten with everybody else pass happy, you don't get a chance to prepare for many teams that rely overwhelmingly on the run as you're getting ready for games on a week-to-week basis.
Let me share this dynamic with you. This one you mentioned about Fickell and orchestrating the style of the play of the football program. Same thing happened to Georgia Southern way back when, guys. I'm talking way back when. I'm talking like 2015 or so. They were a running machine. All they did was ran the football every year.
The Paul Johnson days?
Yes.
Georgia Tech. Yeah, Georgia Tech. Yeah.
Exactly. But Georgia Southern made a coaching change, and since then they've gone completely downhill because they changed the dynamics and the playbook of that particular football program. Luke Fickell is definitely on a hot seat this year.
Which, by the way, your point about Georgia Southern is important, because Georgia Southern recruits a lot of the leftovers from Georgia and Georgia Tech. So it's much more difficult to change style with the players that you're getting to want to change the style are already committed to Georgia and Georgia Tech. And
they've got Georgia State also, like flies around a garbage can too, looking for some of those players. We're going to be back next week, guys, and we're going to continue our previews. Until then, I want to remind everybody out there that we just published our first of two NFL preseason editions of the Playbook Football Newsletter here. We put it out last night, a ton of information in here, and it's almost all exclusively centered around NFL season win totals, and Victor King does a fabulous job of laying out the best NFL player props for this football season here. Download a copy. In fact, you don't have to download a copy. You can go to the playbooksports.com website and download it for free. Put your hands on this copy here. A lot of great reading here. You'll keep it in the library every time you go. I'm talking about the sit-down library every time you go. All right, guys. Great show this week here. Appreciate everything, all the contributions from everybody. Jim Feist, the legend in Las Vegas. Andy Iskoe from TheLogicalApproach.com, and our producer, Greg DePalma from Prime Sports Network. Until next week, when we return here once again with our Southeast Conference preview. That'll be a beauty. Stay tuned for that when we preview the Southeast Conference. This is Mark Lawrence, reminding you to always to remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.